Morning. Again. Uh, I guess time is relatively immaterial in this day and age. Uh, Finally got to the definition of what the fourth dimension is, and it's time, as had been previously figured upon in the past. But we've got all these different definitions. We've got all these explanations for a lot of different things. But there are some things in the world that can never truly be explained because there are concepts, but they're impossible to define outside of their characteristics because they are intangible. They're not something that you can necessarily measure, but there are things that exist. There are provable phenomena that are behind them, but we have nothing besides experience to claim that they are what they are. So the question ends up becoming something along the lines of, well, what really is life? Is life your experience through life? Does that mean that a person with more or less uh, access to their senses would be more or less valuable as their views would be different? I think that all inputs matter. I think that the reason that we are able to see and hear, and others are able to see or hear more or less, is relatively inconsequential because life is a very nebulous thing to a lot of people. A lot of people think that they understand what life is, and then they get to either a point where they are straight up proven wrong, or something, one thing ends up just clicking and being like, huh, not necessarily everything I knew was wrong, but something has changed my view of reality. Some event has changed my life. What was this event? Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. Could be a good thing that was masquerading as a bad thing. Could be a relatively neutral thing. It's sometimes the smallest events that actually end up changing people's lives. And that's part of why life is life. That's why I think that every view and every person, everybody has an impact. You could be blind and deaf and hardly even able to comprehend the world around you. But that doesn't mean you don't still feel. People in a coma are largely just trapped inside their bodies, but they can come back from that, and they usually have a greater understanding of the world. Not necessarily understanding, I guess. They have a greater appreciation for the world. The world is always going to be what it is. It is not inherently one specific way. The world is to us what our experiences in it made it for us. So if you take the time, you can more or less end up impacting your own version of reality and life and turning it into a better or worse thing. Most people don't consciously make it worse, they just don't realize that some of their decisions are things that are conscious and can eventually be undone. Um, Consciously deciding to make your life a better place is a very noble aspiration. It's a thing that a lot of people would just go, oh, I want to do that. Let's just do that. It's also one of the hardest things to be able to actually do. Consciously improving your life requires an immense amount of physical strain, emotional strain, mental strain. If you believe in a separate type of entity, a spiritual strain as well. Every part of you has to be working in unison, and you also have to be in a place in your life where you are capable of making conscious decisions about every action that you perform in life. It's not so much that you can't be yourself, so much as you have to consciously be the best version of yourself that you can be. That's not something people usually do. Because, well, for one, society doesn't really care for most places. It's socially acceptable to do a lot of things that are really bad for your life. You're able to kill yourself off of different drugs. You're able to kill yourself off of different chemicals that are guaranteed to kill you. But outright suicide is banned in a lot of places and a lot of contexts. It's such a strange concept because, oh, I want to die. Well, you can kill yourself, but only 10 to 20 years from now. You can't kill yourself right now. Is this because society is being overly protective, or because it thinks that, and what I also think, every person who is living is able to turn their life around for the better? A lot of people have gone through a lot of things. A lot of people think that they want to die because they don't. They think that they have a grasp on everything that they will ever know. But that's not true, clearly. And I'm not to try and downplay anything along the lines of suicidal ideation, depression, any of those things. But a lot of people are in a bad place in their life, and that sucks. But also, there is always a chance to improve. I think every day is a learning experience. Every failure is a thing that is a teaching method. Every success is something that you can take something away from. You should be proud, but also show humility. There's no need to gloat over your successes necessarily. It feels good, but it's also, you'll end up stop wanting to succeed if you just keep getting congratulated on something that you've succeeded for in the past. You should always strive to make further successes for the future so that you can help mankind on the whole. Our successes our successes are all of our successes. Humanity is one giant family, rather dysfunctional at times, but at our core, we're all very similar. We all have the same needs. We all have the same, largely, physiology. We all have a community that we will belong to. No person is capable of actually being a hermit. It's a largely thought of fallacy that is actually an impossibility. There's no such thing as a spontaneously existing person. And even then, you would have to make a conscious decision to actively seek out the ability to get away from a society. And the things that you had learned in that society are the tools that allow you to exist outside of that society. So, think it's kind of silly to necessarily try and be your own society. What you should instead do is find one that matches your ideals. A lot of people are really upset because they think that there's no place in the world for them. That's just straight up untrue. Every single person is a value to a society. It might not be necessarily their society, or it even could be their society, and they just don't understand their place in it yet, or they don't want to accept their place. And it's noble to want more, but it's also human to understand that you have limitations, that you have faults, that you can't necessarily do everything in the world on your own. There is a lot a single human can accomplish. But most of the people that are in quote unquote positions of power are there because they have subjugated other people to do their bidding. Power is a very strange concept in and of itself as well. Power, by and large, these days is a concept that people refer to as money. Money is not necessarily the inherent evil, but it is, quote unquote, the root of all evil, because people will do absolutely atrocious acts, and they'll write it off because money. This is why, for a good long while there, I was trying to say that greed was actually the worst of the seven deadly sins. Because without greed, none of the other sins happen as often, in my opinion. I would love to hear conflicting opinions on this, and in fact get into a deep philosophical debate, but more often than not, people see how invested I am and just drop the subject completely because they don't want to get into a Socratic debate in 2018. They've got better things to do, and I can't blame them. Go live your best life. But power. How do we define power? Power is a single person's ability to do. It's associated to your worth, and your worth is associated to largely your position, and used to be like physical power, and nowadays physical power is just sort of a defensive mechanism. It's meant to make you seem like you are more than you are. And actual power, unfortunately, comes in the form of paper. There's different types of papers for different types of situations. You write on this paper, and it makes people do your bidding this way. You throw this type of paper at people, and it makes them act this way. You give this person paper, and they will act subservient. It's such a strange thing. Such a disposable commodity, paper. And yet, trees are one of the most lucrative businesses in this day and age. I say most lucrative. That's actually a vast overstatement. Sugar is one of the most lucrative and has been for centuries. But that's neither here nor there. It's such a simple thing. You see paper everywhere. And by and large, it's just paper. A lot of people don't realize that, it's simple. The concepts that drive humanity are simple. They're the same things that drive most animals. Fear is one of the largest motivators in the world these days. I think it is one of the hardest things to do, but also one of the most important, to not act on fear. Fear makes people irrational, And irrational people or irrational decisions are not good for anybody. Irrational decisions tend to lead people to become things like mobs or addicts. Irrationality is one of the things that will drive societies apart because we need to stand together. People people always think if they have a differing opinion that they need to try and fight. It is noble to fight for what you believe in, but I don't necessarily believe that that means you need to rebel against your society specifically. I think we need to rebel against the notion that humans are as different as they want to claim they are, when all they're doing is putting on different hats and saying that they're different. People are trying to actively find more ways that people are different than that they are similar. People are labeling each other as insane, and it's a lot easier for people to think that you're insane than for you to prove your own sanity. Humanity needs to pull together. We need to more than we've ever needed anything before in the entirety of the human race. That is when we are the most useful to each other, to ourselves, to the world, and to potentially other worlds in the future if we pull together successfully enough. We can do many, many great things. We together can move mountains. We can do just about anything you can think of. We can make the impossible possible, but we can't do it alone. We need to come together.